Although I might get pushback from other hypnotists, I am not going to gatekeep the uncomfortable truth about hypnosis when it may not work. And hypnosis is not a magic cure. I am a registered hypnotist with the state of Washington, and I work currently in my private practice with gay men virtually around the globe. My fire alarm system was absolutely whack. So whenever I would cook, it would just go off. So the same thing with anxiety. Sometimes our fire alarm will just go off. We normally have hypertension, hypervigilance. We might have higher anxiety, period. Because you are seeking for help, it doesn't mean that you are fully ready for change. This is why people don't get stuck in hypnosis. I'm going to give you a short answer, and it really depends. Does hypnosis help with anxiety? Well, the answer is a little bit complicated than that. When I was researching the topic, I got a lot of data. So we have hypnotists who say, yes, like hypnosis absolutely works with anxiety, beautiful cure. You hear miracle stories when people, after 1 or 2 sessions, were magically cured from anxiety. And there is another aspect of like literature and research, and we also have anatomy and neuroscience and psychology. So it's a little bit complicated question, and I'm going to break it down to help you to actually make a decision whether or not you want to use therapy and hypnosis for anxiety to help you with anxiety. So we're going to talk about what is anxiety, when to actually seek help outside of hypnosis, because it is really essential, when hypnosis and how hypnosis actually works. So we're going to nerd out on human brain, on neuroanatomy, neurophysiology a little bit. I promise you I'm going to explain as simply as I possibly can. And we're going to talk about whether or not hypnotherapy is actually efficacious and effective treatment for anxiety, and how it actually might work and when it may not work. So I'm going to spell it out, and although I might get pushback from other hypnotists, I'm not going to gatekeep the uncomfortable truth about hypnosis when it may not work, because as a consumer, as a person who is seeking help, you deserve to know. So another thing important to understand before we dive in, there is a physiological component, our brain, our anatomy. There's a psychological component, our psychology. There is a cultural component, because just talking about anxiety and not considering sexual orientation, not considering race and ethnicity, not considering the cultural background would be highly unethical. And we're going to talk about that too, because I work specifically with gay and bisexual men, and for us, anxiety is something that we face in life on an everyday basis, and our anxiety might have very specific root. So we're gonna break it all down. Now, if you're new to me, my name is Eugene Berezin. I worked as a psychotherapist for many, many years in Moscow, Russia. I'm originally from Russia. So I was born, by the way, before the Soviet Union collapsed. I'm not that old, I promise. But I have a master's degree in psychology. I worked as a therapist in Moscow, Russia. I ran private practice there, and I work with a variety of population. And I've done a lot of work with people with chronic and terminal illnesses, with people with intellectual disability, with trauma, with complex trauma when it comes to developmental disability and illnesses, and how it affects in family members. And in the US, I worked as a case manager, social worker, youth counselor, and also anxiety. It's something that is it is a very big topic that is floating around in many, many communities. And as gay men, we do have a shared component in anxiety. And I am a registered hypnotist with the state of Washington, and I work currently in my private practice with gay men virtually around the globe. So no matter where you're at in the world, you can work with me as your hypnotherapist, I use evidence-based methods. I use my trainings, and I'm going to break it down how I specifically work with anxiety, or if I were to work with anxiety. So let's break it down. So shall we start with the brain? So to understand the anxiety, let me give you a big disclaimer right off the bat. If you experience anxiety and it is debilitating, you cannot work, you cannot sleep, you cannot eat. The anxiety is literally getting you so sick that you cannot do anything. It is literally debilitating. Seek medical attention. Go to your primary care practitioner, like your doctor. Seek attention or seek services from licensed mental health professional or with qualified mental health professional wherever you are in the world. In the US, it can be clinical social worker, a licensed mental health counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist. Seek medical attention. So if anxiety is so debilitating that you cannot do anything, this is probably not the time for you to think about, like, well, maybe hypnosis will work. Hypnosis might work, but it is essential if you have never addressed that with other practitioners. And it's important that you address that. If you address that with other practitioners and you are exploring what else you can do for your anxiety, listen up, because this video might be actually the answer that can help you. And I work with a lot of practitioners. Like, I partner with doctors, with psychologists, with licensed therapists, and we work as a care team together on some of the diagnoses, including anxiety. I have my notes here, okay, because this is a really complicated topic and I can't just hold everything in memory. So what is the brain and how anxiety forms in our brain? Well, now we have amygdala. Amygdala is kind of like an alarm system. So when something is not right, there's a little alarm, like ding, 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 something is not right. Amygdala will fire up, and it will get you reactive sometimes in a good way. Like, for example, you're driving on the highway and somebody suddenly stops. So amygdala fires out, wait a minute, we're gonna stop here. So that is amygdala. And amygdala is has a role to play in anxiety. And sometimes when alarm, if your alarm system in your house or in your car is dysregulated or not in tune correctly, that will fire off anytime. Listen, I moved last year in a new apartment. And my fire alarm system was absolutely whacked. So whenever I would cook, it would just go off. So the same thing with anxiety. Sometimes our fire alarm will just go off. And well, this is a part of our brain. So amygdala. So we also have a very interesting component in our brain. And the name is a little bit complicated. It is beta nucleus of the stria terminalis. Yes, I had to read it. BST for short. That actually scans for danger. So it's not an alarm, but it will scan your environment. It will scan if there is a danger. So you notice something, maybe there's a noise in your apartment, maybe it's a system that will alert you. It's kind of like a night watch in a way. So, and that portion of region of your brain also contributes to the anxiety. So we have amygdala, danger, right? We have our alarm system. We have our night watch, the portion of our brain that is scanning for danger. And we have another insula. Insula from Latin means island, and it is a part of our brain that actually scans our body. So and it is a really, really good scanning mechanism, because for example, you're choking or something is hurting, something is not right with your body, so it will alert amygdala, oh my gosh, something's wrong with your body. So that's how it communicates. Now we have anterior cingulate cortex, and this is kind of vigilance dial. It's kind of like this portion of the brain that like kind of like tunes everything in. So like for example, like I don't know, like something might cause like anxiety or like fear. You might jump, and that dial will actually tell you like, okay, like this is probably not a tiger. This is like, I don't know, like you walk in a dark street and you think that somebody is following you, and then you might just glance and it's just like a girl or a boy or like elderly woman or person walking behind you, and like, okay, not necessarily a danger. And we have our prefrontal cortex. This is where we kind of like make a decision. This is kind of the brakes of our brain, and this is where we deal with impulse control, right? And with anxiety disorder or with anxiety in general, that system is out of whack. Now we have different ways to deal with anxiety, right? And different levels of anxiety. Some levels of anxiety might be a little bit elevated, like a little bit iffy, but it's not debilitating. Something might be connected with a painful memory or painful experience. So like this mechanism really varies, like from cultural standpoint. This is just anatomy. But again, for example, if you are from a group that is marginalized or whose identity is constantly devalued by dominant culture, that mechanism might be a little bit more sensitive for you, specifically for gay men. And as for us, we normally have hypertension, hypervigilance, and those like the night watch, the vigilance style, like it might be a little bit more elevated for us, or at least, based on our experiences, we might have higher anxiety. Period. So now let's talk about hypnosis. Does hypnosis work for anxiety? So I'm going to give you a short answer, and it really depends. The short answer, like based on my practice, how I specifically work with people. I normally combine hypnotherapy with something else. So hypnosis by itself always needs like a little, like, in my opinion, a little bit of a foundation. Whether it is motivational interviewing, I use motivational interviewing before hypnosis. First of all, to help you and me understand your readiness for change, because you are seeking for help, it doesn't mean that you are fully ready for change. And if you're not fully ready for change, you may not get the result as fast as you possibly want, even when it comes to anxiety. This is really important. Motivational interviewing is a specific way of talking to people to help them with, so what is ambivalence? Like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know how bad I want it. I don't know if I should do it. People don't have clarity. Motivational interviewing is a way to help them to find that clarity without forcing them, without shaming them, without putting them in like really uncomfortable situations. So, and it's evidence-based. It is used in therapy, like it is very widely used in addiction specifically, and also used in coaching, it used in sales coaching, it used in like motivational training, right? For staff training, it use like medical professionals use it a lot with patients who may not be necessarily ready to take course in the medication. So, and hypnotherapy specifically, hypnosis. So the way I work with hypnosis, I use IS and ego state. So what does it mean? Our brain, our mind rather, is multiple. We have multiple persons, multiple personalities, and this is not a disorder. This is not a new concept. Who actually had this notion that multiplicity of mind. Richard Short, family therapist, LMFT, who actually invented internal family system, ego states therapy, Watkins and Watkins. So the idea that we have multiple parts in our brain, and what I like about IS, it is deeply respectful framework. So we don't treat those parts as lesser than. We respect, like, it's self-respect in a way. So, and with hypnosis specifically, we access those parts and we help them integrate. Now, hypnosis, and I'm going to share like the same brain mechanism what we do with hypnosis, like just in a little bit to understand how hypnosis, what areas hypnosis actually hits. But hypnosis, per my practice, per my observation, it helps people to reduce anxiety. And hypnosis is not a magic cure. It's not that like, okay, this or hypnotherapist for X amount of sessions and I will be cured from anxiety. This is not how it works. So the way I work with people, aside from motivational interviewing, aside from like hypnotherapy that is directed to multiple and really integrate each part of your mind through eyes and ego states and help with those, like help those anxious parts of your mind actually integrate together with your system as a whole. And after that, also using motivational interviewing with, so like you can have integrated. I also give my clients personalized recordings so they can use in between sessions as a self-regulation tool. And also I teach them how to do self-hypnosis as a self-regulation tool, because my point is like to work with people so they know how to regulate themselves. So they don't have to come to me for the same thing over and over again. So we can keep evolving. We can keep working together on new things. So this is very important. And this is how I specifically work with hypnosis. The evidence suggests, the researchers suggest that, well, hypnosis by itself for anxiety, it may work, but we don't have direct evidence that hypnosis, the only hypnosis, works 100% for anxiety. There's no evidence. And this is exactly why in my services, when I do hypnotherapy, I combine it with motivational interviewing. I combine it with the foundation of ICE in hypnosis. And more importantly, when I do my hypnosis and hypnotherapy, it is not a replacement for talk therapy or for medication or for anything else. So like I said, I often work with other providers when there are very difficult cases, persons with anxiety. That is the case. And this is exactly how hypnosis works. So, and if you are curious what brain parts are activated during hypnosis, so I'm going to share with you. So now we have in our brain, when we do hypnosis, we do have like executive control network. So executive control network, prefrontal cortex, like what it actually does. So it deliberate effortful attention. So meaning, like, to kind of explain it simply, it helps you to navigate the attention. So it helps you with task selection. So with hypnosis, when we do induction, it's very relaxed and positive process. And with the executive control network, with direct attention inside versus from the outside. So another part of our brain that we have is salience network. Salience network is kind of like a switchboard. So what it does, it decides what deserves your attention. So it's literally switchboard. So then, and this is really important point. So salience network, you can select to go inside, but also like if something deserves your attention, if like, for example, there's an emergency or there's something like dangerous going on around you, your brain, your unconscious mind, your mind overall with like amygdala and the whole thing will wake you up, and this is why people don't get stuck in hypnosis. So in switchboard, salience network decides when to switch your attention to which task. So that is your control switch in a way in your brain. And this is a part of the brain that actually gets activated. And we have default mode network. So the default network, what it actually does, it is posterior cingulate cortex. So what it actually does, it is area of the brain that helps with the biography, like who I am, perspective thinking, or understanding other people's intention. And in hypnosis, in a way, in a safe way, it kind of like starts to disconnect from your executive control network in a way. So like it kind of goes quiet. So the way it works, like now, the vigilance monitor gets quiet because you are in a more relaxed state. You are in a more controlled state. And like it's essential to do hypnosis in more relaxed and controlled state. Number two, thinking brain couples to body sensing brain, right? So you're not just thinking, and many people say like we bypass the conscious mind, we bypass the thinking. No, like we actually redirecting the attention. We go within, and this is why I like progressive muscle relaxation. So we actually focus on here and now, and the inner speech in a way, it kind of like gets quieter, or not necessarily gets disconnected, but gets quieter. So in that state, with appropriate treatment, with appropriate methodology, can actually create positive change. So, and the secret actually is not necessarily in anatomy, right? Because we can debate how CBT works, how FS works, how other psychotherapy modality work. But the point, if I were to explain it really, really simpler, is to create new connections, new associations. So because in hypnosis, aside from like addressing every part of your brain, we use guided imagery. We create new associations. We create new resources, or we look for internal resources that can actually help us quite a bit in our day-to-day life. So, and specifically how it works with, how it helps with anxiety, your mind can be more regulated. And with combination of motivational interviewing, understanding like where you at, getting clarity, getting in a very like relaxed, positive state with suggestions, and when those suggestions giving with respect with your internal system, that can produce very positive change. And post hypnosis is when we actually integrate that into action plan, use hypnosis and self-hypnosis as a tool to regulate yourself and do really internal work that can actually help to quiet your mind in a way. So that's how everything works. So I know this video was a little long or a little bit more nerdy than usual, but I hope it helps if you're looking for a therapist. And especially if you are a gay man, gay or bisexual man, and you're looking for help either navigating breakup, divorce, really difficult challenges, or maybe you're noticing that you would like to address the anxiety, the anxious parts of you. And again, your anxiety is not this debilitating monster that you cannot eat, you cannot go to work, but you rather would like to quiet your anxious mind and address that those parts overall. That would be a really good fit for you. Go to my website, check it out. I have a lot of resources for you. I have a lot of articles for you, and you can find more about my background, what I do. Go to hypnotherapy.org. I love you so much. Thank you so much. And also let me know in the comments what I can bring more to you specifically. All right. I hope it helps. Bye, y'all.